My guest this evening is a wonderful Northwest musician. Her blend of R&B influenced pop music has garnered a strong following over the years. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts Virtual Studio, Stephanie Mae.
Hey.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for joining me. And I understand that the pandemic kind of got you locked down in Portland instead of up in the Seattle area. So can you kind of walk us through, like, were you down there just visiting people, or were you for work or doing a gig? And then what kind of got you down there?
My sister lives here, so I just figured if I had to stay within a 50-foot radius of somewhere, it should be near my sister. So I just came down here to hang out with her, and then the pandemic just kept going, and I'm like, I'm just gonna stay here.
Okay, so it actually reminds me, we had another guest who was here in Seattle, but she's originally from Colorado, and her sister lives here. So when the pandemic happened, she kind of got stuck here in Seattle, and she was living in a studio apartment with her sister. And she was saying it was nice, but it was also kind of weird because she didn't feel completely at home because it wasn't her home.
Right.
Are
Yeah.
you kind of feeling the same thing being in your sister's place down in Portland?
Um, it's actually okay because I feel like when I'm with my sister, it feels like home. So if anything, it
Okay.
feels a little bit more like home. It's kind of weird.
Okay, well, that's good though. That's good that it feels comfortable down there though.
Yeah. So
And so oh, go ahead.
yeah, and she's another roommate, so it's been fun. We've just been watching episodes of random stuff.
Okay, so you actually have kind of an interesting point of view then versus like the folks that are here in Seattle. While you've been down there, you just been, like you said, you've been watching stuff on Netflix or what have you, and probably working on music and just trying to find ways to pass the time.
Yeah, I've actually been working. It's actually been perfect because I had recorded some songs with my band, these unfinished audio tracks up in Seattle at Robert Lang Studios and Mysterious Red X Studios in Soto. And they weren't finished. And it was the perfect time to find a producer to finish them and then make them fully produced tracks. So I spent the first part of the pandemic working with a producer in Nashville. Her name's Femke. She's amazing. And yeah, she worked on the two latest singles, You Got Me, and the one before that, Beep Feelings. I want to be appropriate for your show. So yeah, those are the two singles that I put out during this pandemic. And then I have another one I'm working on that's going to go on an EP, and it's going to be a 6-song EP that I want to release in the fall. So I've been busy. I feel like I've been just as busy during the pandemic compared to even before. So
Oh, okay. That's
yeah.
that's that's interesting because, again, with every guest that I've had on, and now it's been, I think this is the 29th interview in the last 2 months, and a lot of the folks are kind of feeling the opposite, that they're not being productive, they're not getting as much done, they're trying to keep their mental health in check, and all the things that we understand are going on because of the pandemic and the unrest and everything else. So that's actually really good though, that you've had things that have been keeping you going and busy and productive and all
Yeah,
that.
I feel really lucky, but I definitely also want to make sure that I take time to relax and recharge and not feel the pressure to have to keep producing things. But it makes me happy. The music is keeping me sane, so it's a win-win. So I'm just gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And we talked about this before, that a lot of people are always looking for that silver lining during this time. Doesn't matter where it comes from or what it is, as long as you find it, then you just kind of keep hanging on to them wherever they come. Um, and I'm definitely one of those people too. So cool. And so I want to kind of go back a little bit in terms of uh, when I was doing some research on you today. I know that your college years were spent at Stanford, so I want to get to that later. But
Mhm.
prior to college, are you a native Washingtonian? What were you like as a younger person? When did you get involved with music and or the arts? Can you kind of fill us in?
Yeah. So I'm a native Washingtonian. I was born just outside of Seattle. My sister and I grew up in Renton, so just in the suburbs just outside of Seattle. And that was where I felt like I was the happiest as a child. Like I love Washington. I love the rain. I love the trees and the greenery. Um, but I also had asthma growing up, really bad asthma. So I would be in the hospital sometimes for like weeks at a time, frequently. And my dad also had asthma. So for like a variety of different reasons, that and other factors, our entire family moved to Arizona when I was like 10 years old. And that felt like a shock to the system, right? Because it was like opposite in almost every single way. Um, and that's where I ended up going to high school. And that's actually where I started writing songs. I felt very like isolated and lonely because it felt like I didn't really fit in to the culture as much. Um, I'm naturally very shy and introverted, and you probably wouldn't guess that sometimes being like a performer, but that's kind of my natural state on the inside. And I just felt like I wasn't, for whatever reason, I was an outsider when I moved to Arizona. So I was actually like bullied a lot, picked on a lot. I didn't feel like I fit in. And so I felt like I went through a lot of like emotional turmoil when I was that age. And music is how I dealt with it. And that's why I started songwriting, because I had all these emotions that I didn't really know how to process. When you're like 16 or whatever, you don't have at least I didn't even know what a therapist was, right? So I just started writing. And yeah, I'm half Filipino, so my mom has been like playing music for us since we were little, and she played guitar and she sang, and so I always had music in my life. And then the songwriting part came when I had moved to Arizona. And yeah, not to like talk bad about Arizona, because now I love Arizona. Like I think it's got such beauty in it. There's like such a beautiful like desert beauty. Yeah.
Okay, no, and it makes sense. I mean, you're speaking to what happened to you when you're in high school, and that happened to be where you were living.
Right.
And as everyone, when you become an adult, then you have different experiences when you go back to places. I know that's true for myself. I was going to ask you, when you started working on your songs, were you playing piano, guitar? What were you kind of starting to write your songs on? What instrument?
Yeah, I was writing on both. So my parents put me in piano lessons when I was 10 years old. So that's actually the instrument that I feel the most comfortable playing. And then I picked up the guitar a little bit later when I was around like 16. Um, and so I started just writing on both. And to this day, I still write on both. Um, yeah.
Okay. And so, like your early influences, which may be completely different than what you're influenced by now. What were some of your early influences when you're doing those early songs?
Yeah. Fiona Apple was a big influence. Like I have you heard of When the Pawn, that particular album? It's like
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that got me through so much of that difficult time, right? Because she's like raw, real, feels her emotions heavily. So that was a big influence. And I believe you can hear her in my two recent singles, like You Got Me. There's definitely like odes to Fiona in that. Um, I also really love Green Day. I know that's like not your typical answer, but they had come out with American Idiot during that time,
Mhm.
and that there was a lot of like, obviously anger in that album about what was going on in the world at that time. And they also speak a lot about like loneliness and isolation and not fitting in. So I really resonated with that album. And I feel like that kind of feeds into my music now, because I sing about, that loneliness and feeling kind of like, not fitting in. And then Michelle Branch, I really loved her. She also came from Arizona. She's Hapa like me, and she played her own guitar. She wrote her own songs. So actually, she inspired me to write my own songs. Like she was the first figure that I saw that I felt like I was similar to, and I was like, oh, if she can do that, then I can do that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's something that gets overlooked when it comes to finding a role model or a hero or whatever you want to call that person that you connect with them so much. Maybe not just based on their music, but also their background and ethnically and anything else that might be coming from that person. And it's definitely something really really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were working on those songs, and you didn't fit in high school, and I can relate to that. I used to have really long hair in high school. I was a total metalhead,
Yeah.
band shirts, leather jacket, jeans, that kind of thing.
That stuff is kind of cool. Like,
See, I've mentioned this before during interviews that when I was in high school looking like that, I was really kind of in even a smaller niche because the other rockers were like ditching class and smoking cigarettes off campus. And that wasn't me. I was in AP classes. So I really didn't fit. I didn't have anybody, just a small group of people that were also into metal, but also were pretty studious. So, and I'm still friends with a lot of them today. So we kind of laugh about it now.
that. See, that's been more rebellious to be like, I'm gonna look like a rebel, but then like be clean and take care of my lungs.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of getting off on a weird subject, but I want to mention this story because somebody asked me this a long time ago. I used to be a teacher, so a lot of times my students would say, "Oh, didn't you used to do drugs and didn't you used to drink?" I said, "Well, I drank and I still drink now, but I never smoked. I never did drugs, no pot, no anything else." And I always
Yeah.
tell them the story that I saw AC/DC back in 1982, and I was in sixth grade, and I was there with my brother and my mom. And there was a guy on the steps inside the Seattle Coliseum, which became Key Arena, which is now becoming that climate change, whatever they're calling it. And this guy was face down in a puddle of puke. And as a sixth grader, I'm like, oh, that's so gross. And I remember asking my mom, I don't know if she remembers this. She's probably watching this interview right now, and saying, what's wrong with that guy? And she said he's on drugs. And whether he was, I don't know. He could have had too much alcohol, whatever. But at the time, that always got burned in my brain. Like, I don't ever want to be like that guy. So I never touched that stuff. And it was just something really small like that happened. And it just stayed with me the rest of my life. So crazy things. And but so you're feeling like that during high school. And then, like I mentioned earlier, you went to Stanford. And what was your experience like at Stanford?
Yeah. So the whole Stanford path. So because I was feeling lonely and isolated, like I wasn't invited to parties. I didn't go to a single party when I was in high school. Um, and I was just, devoted to my academics because like what else would you focus on? And I remember I asked my dad, I was like, I really want to go to a good college. Like, which college should I go to? And on the TV screen, Stanford was playing football. And he was just like, well, that's a good school. Stanford's pretty good. And so, like, kind of similar to your story, that just stuck in my mind. I was like, I want to go to Stanford. And it just became this, like goal. And then when I went to Stanford, I definitely still had this part of me that was artistic and really wanted to be creative and expressive. And so before I went to Stanford, I dyed my hair red and I got a nose piercing. And I kind of thought that maybe there would be this indie artsy scene similar to like Berkeley. Like I thought it wouldn't be too far apart, but that wasn't the case. I was definitely the only person in like my dorm and like every dorm around me that had dyed hair. And can you believe it? Even a nose piercing like that. Like I'm surprised about that too. So yeah, I love Stanford. Like there's so much that I learned from it. There's definitely like an entrepreneurial spirit, starting your own, having a vision and then manifesting it in the world. But yeah, I was definitely like a free spirit at Stanford, which you don't find too many of those, I think. But I did my thing. I like played shows at the coffee shops and I tried to make a band. That did not work out. I never had a band all through college, so I just played solo shows. And I recorded my first EP when I was there, which isn't on Spotify, but you can buy it through Spotify. And it's just, there's a pile of them in my closet. But yeah, that was my first foray into making music. But yeah, the entire time I was at Stanford, there was definitely like this push and pull between like following this academic path, the standard path, and also like really wanting to be an artist and a musician and feeling guilty if I was doing that. So I didn't really pursue it heavily. I definitely was like, I have to like get my degree and get good grades and do my internship and get a good job, which I'm really thankful for. Like I wouldn't ever change a thing. Like I'm so glad I went there and I'm so happy with, the path I took and getting my degree and everything like that because, I'm doing music now. Like so it doesn't matter.
Okay, and you got your degree in biomechanical engineering, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so did you work as an engineer after college for a period of time, or did you already move into music after college?
Yeah, I worked as an engineer after college. Um, and yeah, shortly like after like a couple years in that, I love the experience of being an engineer. And then I actually pivoted from that and became a designer, which I'm still doing today for my job. Um, and yeah, because I love the creative aspect of engineering. Like there's a problem that you need to solve and doing like design thinking to solve it and coming up with, a creative or visionary solution. Um, but I wanted to move into like particularly UX design because I felt like it was more creative, more fast moving. You could design for anything physical products, you could design for apps. That's what I work on now is an app. Yeah, it felt more versatile and yeah.
Well, as you're saying that and describing how you pivoted, I think there's some people that are maybe in the Twitch chat right now. They're kind of like getting really like like their ears perked up because there are some real tech-oriented people that are really into Alice. And
Oh,
so
cool.
when you're talking about that, I would think they're probably like, "What did she just say?" um, and I have another guest that's been on that's also a good friend of mine, and she started off as a software engineer, and then she didn't find that wasn't for her, and then she moved to design, but doing like set designs and things like for film and
Oh,
that
cool.
kind of thing. But then
Yeah.
she had that exact same pull of like my parents said I should be doing this and I should be getting my degree, but then she had this whole artistic thing pulling in this other direction. And right now she's trying to pursue that much more than any of the other stuff that she studied in college.
Yeah. I love stories like that because I think what happened with me, and maybe it's similar to her, is that we see examples of other musicians who have made it and they just like, went for it, right? Their parents helped them out or they quit their job and they just went for it like Prince. Like he was like, I had no backup plan. I just became like this like legend. And like that's why I was so stressed. I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm not doing that, then I'm not pursuing music. And that's why I felt so torn. But now that I'm older and I've been able to kind of observe and figure out my own kind of story, you can do both. You can have like a stable job and still work on music. It's tough. Like you have to put limits on the job. You can't be working like 80 hours a week and devoting everything to it, but there you can put boundaries and be like, okay, I music's important to me or whatever creative path is important to me. So I'm going to set aside this time for it and put boundaries on this job. It may mean like I work less hours and get paid less or whatever, but if you look at like the whole picture, maybe you're feeling more fulfilled and pursuing what you want to.
Yeah, no, it's that whole thing about work-life balance, and depending on what your work happens to be, if that means your day job plus your for fun job or whatever you want to call it, but then also time with your friends and family and everything else, you just have to figure out what works best for you, and it's different things for different people. So makes absolute sense. I think this is a great time. I think what I want to do, so everybody out there, uh, I, I have to tell you the story. I almost called you Vanessa Mae, and that's because there's another electric violinist named Vanessa Mae that was very popular.
I love
And okay, yeah, so I was almost going to call you Vanessa Mae,
the name
but
Vanessa. That's my favorite name. So if you'd call me that, I would have been like, yes.
I'll remember that next time I actually see you in person. I'll call you Vanessa instead of Stephanie. But we have a video, a promo video that we're going to run for Stephanie, and then when we come back from that, then we'll have Stephanie kind of set up the song that she's going to perform live for all of us. So if the Alice folks could run the promo video right now, that would be awesome.
For the devil.
Okay, so that was a quick promo video from Stephanie. And now, Stephanie, what song are you going to be playing? Can you kind of give us some background before you play?
Sure. This song is called You Got Me. It's my latest single. It's a very simple piano ballad that I wrote in 10 minutes one day. I only say that because some of my songs take me like 2 years with all it's just bouncing around. And one day I'm like, oh, it's finally done. But this one came together pretty quickly.
Okay, awesome. So everybody out there, this is Stephanie Mae with You Got Me. Take it away.
All right. Ooh, hey, hey. I don't know what it is, but baby, you got me. You got me. My head is spinning around and I can't touch the ground. Baby, you got me. So can we speed this thing up because it feels crazy. Hey, hey, hey. I hope that you feel it too. I don't know what it is, but baby, you got me. You got me. My head is spinning around. I can't touch the ground. Baby, you got me. You got me. And when I see your face, I just can't explain. Something stirs within me. You're a nightmare I don't want to wake. I don't know what it is, but baby, you got me. You got me. My head is spinning around. I can't touch the ground. Baby, you got me. You got me. I don't know what it is, but baby, you got me. You got me. My head is spinning around. I can't touch the ground. Baby, you got me. I don't know what it is, but baby, you got me. You got me. Yeah, yeah. My head is spinning around. I can't touch the ground. Baby, you got me. You got me.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for playing live. I love hearing people, do their thing. Just like it's the closest thing I get to being in at a concert. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for listening. I realized as I was playing, I was like, "Oh my gosh, my head's cut off," and then I was like trying to play down here. Like,
Oh, it was all good. I was just curious, like, so with the lyrics to that song, is it about a person or just about something else that's got you, or what's the story behind the lyrics?
I love that question. So this is pretty on the nose. This was about a person. um, but it's really funny because I felt like I captured a very particular moment in time because when I wrote this, I was like, I just want to write a sweet song. I'm just feeling sentimental. I'm feeling kind of whimsical and giddy. I'm just gonna maybe I'll write a love song. I'll just pull that out of thin air. I'm just gonna write a love song. And then I started writing this, and I when I was all done, I was like, oh my god, am I like where is this coming from? And it like it made me reflect. I was like, did I write this about someone? And so it was like, I guess it was very reflective. Um, but it was like a very particular moment in time. And then like 5 minutes after I wrote this song, I was like, that's crazy stuff. Like, get that out of your head. That's not how you're feeling. Move on.
No, I mean it came out so good. It reminds me of there was another artist. This is not during the tour. This is like many years ago. Who said that she can't find. She's a happy person, but she can't write happy songs.
God.
And so it might be a little bit like that. What you described. That typically maybe you write something that's not as maybe as happy as that song, but it happened to come out of you. So that's a part of who you are. It just happened to come out, and you didn't. You're kind of surprised by it.
Yeah, this is like the only happy song on my entire set list right now. So it was meant to be. Someone's like, you need to write something happy stuff. So we're gonna like plop you down and trick you and put you in front of the piano.
Well, that's kind of a good segue to talk about the local Seattle scene. We're kind of doing that pre-show, and you're mentioning how much you love the local Seattle scene. Can you kind of speak to your experiences with all the other musicians up here in Seattle?
Yeah. I mean that's where I feel like my home is for my music. Um, yeah, it's just a supportive community. It feels like lifelong, it feels like they're in it for the long run. Like they're there to support you through thick and thin, through the long haul, not just, hey, I want to be on your bill or like, it's not superficial. It feels very genuine. So some of the people that you mentioned, like I played a show with Tobias the Owl. I think Heather Edgley's been on your show. Like
Mhm.
there's just two of the people that are like totally genuine supportive people. Um, and I support them. And that's just two of the names. I mean, there's so many. I don't want to leave anyone out, but
Right.
yeah, I love the Seattle scene.
Yeah, like we were talking pre-show. I mean, just the fact that Tobias and I still are in communication, what 9 years later, kind of tells you all you need to know that it wasn't this fly-by-night thing of me writing a review of his music and then just kind of disappearing or whatever. It's like, no, I really like his stuff, and he's still supportive of Eclectic Arts. And then here we are, 9 years later, doing a virtual interview and all this other kind of stuff. And Heather actually, I saw Heather with Tobias 3 years ago, so that's how I got to know her.
Yeah.
I saw Katie Cuffle several times in the area, and she's going to be coming on during the next batch of these interviews. And so it's great because it's not like some people, I think, when they've watched the interviews, thought that like I know all these people personally, like I can just get on my phone and text them. I'm just like, I don't think I don't have anyone's phone number like that. I know them from shows or writing reviews or doing concert photography, but it's awesome that we can still be in that same ballpark. So it doesn't matter if it's 2 years or like in our case, we're just meeting right now for the first time. And that I think speaks to what the community is like up here in Seattle when it comes to music, that we do support each other and we don't just, get in and get out. It's like, no, we're all still there doing our thing.
I love it. And what I really love about it too is it doesn't feel competitive. Like it's not like, oh, you're also a female solo singer songwriter. Like Heather and I are both female solo singer songwriters, and we're like best friends, which like means so much to me. I feel like it's a testament to the Seattle scene, but you don't
Yeah.
find that anywhere.
Yeah, no, that's another excellent point that everyone's trying to help each other out and like genuinely trying to do it. So like, hey, can you come on this bill? Or hey, do you know a bass player? I need somebody for this thing. I had George Varghese, who runs Verge Studios in Bothell, and he was talking about the same concept with the other recording studios. They all will send other clients to each other because they realize, hey, maybe I'm not the best studio for this type of music, but then so-and-so over in Shoreline is, or someone in Seattle is, and they all kind of work together and everyone benefits from it. So it's same thing with the musicians. I wanted to ask you about the F Feeling song that you wrote.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that it's not as literal as it seems, that it's more about, because I know if I read things right, it took you a long time to finish the lyrics and that whole song, like it was a multi-year process. Can you speak to the background of that song and also the lyrics behind it?
Yes. Okay, I love that question too. Right, because when you hear the title, you think, oh, feelings aren't important. We don't need to feel that, right? Um, but no, the song, I like hesitate because I want people to like make their own conclusions, but clearly, like, I'm a deep feeler. I'm very sensitive. I feel things all the time. Like that's just all that I'm doing is feeling. So the song is literally just about feeling something so intensely and being just overwhelmed by it and being like, I can't handle this right now. I just want them to go away. I just want to press the off button. Um, but obviously, I think feelings are really important to feel and process. But that's why I wrote this song, is because I sort of wanted to write something that kind of was an ode to all of the people like myself that are super sensitive and feel really deeply and can get overwhelmed by those feelings. So this is kind of a silly story, but I first wrote this song. I wish this was about something beyond just romantic stuff, but I first wrote this song about one particular guy, and it wasn't even like that big of a deal, but like I started kind of putting lyrics because I was kind of just frustrated by the whole situation. And then after that, I kind of moved on from that. I had a very similar scenario come up where I had more inspiration for this song, where I'm like, oh, another failed situation that is providing me lyrics to add to this song. So I'm just gonna write about this person now and add these lyrics to it. And then it happened one more time. And that was like the last person that finished the song. So that's why it was like a 2-year period, because it was like a 2-year terrible period in my romantic life. But I'm happy because that's how I got this song. If it worked out, I wouldn't have a song like this. But yeah, but after the third person, I was like, I need to finish this song. We're done. We're done with this.
Well, I think when we were talking about this pre-show, I think something that you're going to find in common if you kind of dig into the world of Alice is that Tosh, the lead singer, is very empathetic, also an empath like yourself.
Yeah.
I kind of consider myself the same way, that things I may not look at or I don't necessarily come across, but when I'm not on camera or when I'm by myself, I sit there and process things a lot. And it could be the smallest thing to the biggest thing. And especially with what's been going on out here, that sometimes it just starts piling up and piling up. And I'm somebody that always tries to reach out and try to help other people. But sometimes I need the help. Like the counselor needs the counselor kind of a thing. And so I completely relate to what you were just describing about the background to that song, because again, in another life, I worked as a teacher and I've worked with helping a lot of diverse populations over my professional career. And you take a lot of that with you, no matter what's going on. Not to get too personal, but there's things that I've had to deal with other people's children that you would hope that would never, ever happen. But here I am as a mandated reporter. I had to deal with it on a legal level. And it's just awful, some of the things that I had to go through. But that helped build me into the person that I am. And I'm still like that now. So I kind of sense when someone's not doing well. And I can't tell myself, well, just leave them alone. Who cares? That's their issue. It's like, well, how are you doing? You're kind of seeming like there's something, weighing you down today. And then, things go where they're going to go. But I don't want to change that about myself, but I have learned more how to find the balance of, you can't keep trying to save everybody. That doesn't, because then you're going to drown. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, but at the same token, I don't want to be somebody that's, somebody does need my help and I'm in the position to do it, then I'm glad to do it. And yeah, there's a lot of commonality with your background and everything that even I didn't know. And now we're finding that across the world of myself and with Alice, that you fit right in with our group.
Yay.
Cool. So let's kind of talk about I saw something that's probably a little bit different now. I think this interview was maybe 5 years ago, and you'd mentioned that when you first started performing, like you had massive stage fright,
Yeah.
and it was, and then so how are things now? Has it gotten better? Is it kind of the same, or where are you at with that?
Yeah. I still get stage fright. I actually get more stage fright if I'm performing by myself than if I'm with a band. Um, I feel less stage fright when I'm with my band because I feel like, especially if it's like a dark club or something where like I'm like, and everyone's drunk, I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter what I do. But when it's like a very intimate solo set, like I still get really nervous. And actually, it's so funny. I've been performing for my coworkers at work, like I've been hosting these open mics. That is the most nerve-wracking experience I've ever done as a performer. I don't know what it is. If it's because it's like my boss and like the CEO is on the line, but every single time I'm like, I am nervous out of my mind. And I feel like I never perform well for those. Like I'm just like, please just watch a YouTube video online. That's how I actually perform. Um, but yeah, I think like over the years I heard something about like your brain neurons just get used to it. So over time,
Hmm.
hoping it'll just get better. But yeah, it hasn't held me back yet. So
Okay, well that's good. And when you were talking about performing for your coworkers, that sounds a little familiar to me because I had a duo that played around town. Well, it's been a while, about 3 years ago, and when I performed in front of just the strangers that were there at that particular coffee shop or that brewery or whatever, that was fine. But then you start folding in my family. And it's like, well, it's my family. Is what that's okay to an extent. And then extended family starts showing up. And then I had some coworkers show up, and this mixing of worlds showed up.
yeah, it's confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because each group knows you a certain way.
Right.
Um, so now you're getting to see me amongst all these people. It's kind of like that. Well, here's an old, Seinfeld thing, but when the worlds collide for George and all that stuff, it's
Yeah.
very much the same. Like, well, this is my work world, this is my family world, this is my friend world, this is my stranger world over here. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, what are you gonna do? They're all there to hear you play, so you got to do it. And it's like
Yeah.
that was the most nerve wracking time for me as a performer, for sure.
And you brought up that you process a lot. I do too. I'm sure you're just processing. You're like, how do I interact in a way that like I can still be myself, but I know there's like five worlds colliding and your brain is just exploding, right?
Yep. Yep. There's times when I'd be saying things in between songs on the mic, and I'm trying to think, well, wait a minute, what do I say? Because like my coworkers don't know this about me, or I don't want them to ask more about this.
Right.
Um, or
Right.
there may have been something that I said to like a close friend that maybe my family doesn't know about. And it's like, oh, and then you see, and as you're playing, then you see them talking to each other, like, oh my God, what are they talking about?
I know, like, actually, it's so funny because I wrote this song about like having this like anxiety spiral, which is like, like something I feel like is not uncommon, but I performed it at work for the open mic. And I'm like, I promise I'm a stable person and I can handle this workload that you're giving me despite this.
It's crazy how those kind of things come up. At the same time, it's kind of cool when at least for the most part, that if it works out, and it's like, no, they're only looking at you a certain way, and maybe it's too much in your head. I know that's how it is for me. I overthink things.
Oh, absolutely. I always overthink things. Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's like it just kind of, well, you're just going to do what you can do. And again, I haven't performed in a long time. I've been doing all this stuff instead. So we're getting down to the last couple minutes, and so I know you kind of said you have another song that you kind of are going to be working on for, I think it's an EP. You said that's coming up. Can you speak more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's another song that I recorded with my band that is being produced by a producer in Nashville. That's going to be the first song on the new EP. It's called Too Late Now. I'm actually just finishing up the mixing process and I'm like so excited about it. It has this like epic instrumental bridge part that I envisioned it in my head. I envisioned strings. I envisioned like powerful drums and this like piano riff is in it and it's so epic and I'm like so excited that it's actually going to be on my EP. And then I'm working on more of like an R&B style song with another producer in New York. And then another one called Cigarette Lips that I've performed live a couple times will be on the album. And then I still have to write the last one. So
Okay, that sounds awesome. That you got things that are sounds like a lot of variance coming up in those songs.
yeah,
And for me personally, I love that kind of thing. I love it when someone doesn't just stick to one style or one type of music. There's a bunch of variants going on in their songs. It's much more interesting to me.
yeah, exactly. There's kind of like that rock, vibe. There's the R&B, obviously pop and some electronic stuff. So
Awesome. Well, Stephanie, it was awesome getting to know you, and thank you so much for coming on, performing live for us. And for the last like 10 seconds, where can people find you online and through socials?
yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. So you can find me online. I'm Stephanie Mae. It's just Stephanie, and then Mae is Mae. So you can find me on Spotify, Instagram. I have a website, stephaniemae.com, which points to everything. So if you just go there, you'll find everything else.
Sounds good. Stay safe down in Portland, and hopefully, I'll get a chance to see you play live at some point.
So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.